aitah for thinking this family vacation was never meant for me. It started with a suitcase and a lie. My mom called me on a Tuesday evening, her voice too bright. The kind of tone people use when they're hiding something. "We're going on a family vacation," she said. "It'll be fun. Just a week by the lake." I hadn't been on a family trip since I was 12. I'm 21 now, so yeah, I wanted to believe her, but the moment she said we, I should have asked who we included. I didn't. I wanted to trust her again. That was my first mistake. When we arrived at the lake house, I realized pretty quickly this wasn't about family. The family she meant was her, my stepdad Greg, his 2 kids from his first marriage, and me. The extra piece that didn't quite fit the puzzle. I stood in the doorway holding my bag as they unpacked. There were 4 bedrooms. Greg's kids minus 14 and 16. Each got their own. My mom and Greg had the master suite, which left me. "You'll share with Katie," my mom said. "You 2 are close in age, it'll be fun." Katie, the 16-year-old, Greg's daughter, the girl who once told me I was the mistake child when she thought I couldn't hear. I froze. "You want me, a 21-year-old, to share a room with your husband's teenage daughter? Don't make it weird," Greg cut in. "It's just sleeping arrangements. It's a vacation, not a luxury resort." But it wasn't just about the room. It was everything behind it. They didn't invite me to dinner the first night, said they didn't want to wake me when they went out. But the photos on Instagram told the truth. Everyone smiling around a restaurant table while I sat alone in the dark cabin, listening to the creak of unfamiliar walls. I should have left then. But when you've spent years being told that you're too sensitive, you start to doubt your own discomfort. So I stayed. By day 3, I wasn't even pretending anymore. They went hiking without me. They rented a boat without me. The only time they remembered I existed was when Mom asked me to take a family photo. As I looked through the camera lens, I saw her leaning into Greg, smiling like she'd won something. And maybe she had. She'd built a new family. One where I didn't belong. That night, I confronted her. "You said this trip was for us. For family. Why am I even here if you didn't want me around?" She sighed. The same sigh he heard 100 times growing up. "You always think everything's about you. This isn't a punishment. You're making it weird by complaining." Greg chimed in from across the room. "Yet, kid, relax. We invited you out of kindness. You could at least be grateful." Grateful. That word stung. Grateful for being ignored, for being treated like the outsider in my own bloodline. I laughed, quietly, bitterly. And that's when Mom said something you'll never forget. "You need to stop acting like you're part of everything, okay? This is my life now. You had your childhood." I didn't say anything after that. Just walked outside and sat on the porch, watching the reflection of the lake ripple under the moonlight. Behind me, I could hear them laughing, a warm, comfortable sound that didn't belong to me. And it hit me. I wasn't invited to join the family. I was invited to witness it, to prove to my mother that she'd moved on. The next morning, I packed my things before sunrise. Greg was the only one awake. "Leaving already?" he asked, smirking like it was a joke. "You're missing breakfast." "Tell my mom I said goodbye," I replied. He looked almost amused. "You really can't handle being told no, huh?" I paused at the door, then turned back just long enough to say, "No." I just finally realized what no feels like when it comes from family. And I left. I got on a bus, no plan, no destination. Just an empty road and a phone buzzing with my mother's messages. "Where did you go? You're being dramatic. You ruined the trip for everyone." I didn't answer, because sometimes silence says everything you never got to say growing up. It's been 6 months since that vacation. They haven't reached out since. Not for my birthday, not for holidays, not for anything. And maybe that's for the best. I've realized that betrayal doesn't always come as a scream or a slap. Sometimes it's just quiet exclusion. 1,000 small cuts disguised as you're overreacting. So now I sit here wondering, was I wrong for finally standing up for myself? For refusing to smile and play along while they pretended I didn't exist? Or am I just tired of being the ghost at the family table? Party the letter she sent me a year later. A year passed before I heard from her again. A full year of silence, no calls, no texts, no birthdays, not even a hollow Merry Christmas message. Then, one morning, I found an envelope wedged between the bills in my mailbox. No return address, just my name written in her handwriting. I stood there for a long time before opening it. Something about it felt off. too deliberate, too planned. Like a trap disguised as closure. I tore it open anyway. Dear Alex, if you're reading this, it means I've finally gathered the courage to write. I know you probably hate me, but there are things you don't understand. I didn't choose Greg over you. I chose survival. I stopped there, because even before she finished her sentence, I could feel the lie underneath it. She always wrote like that. Half confession, half manipulation. She never apologized without turning herself into the victim first. Still, I kept reading. When you left the lake house, you were right. It wasn't really a vacation for you. I invited you because Greg wanted to see if we could all blend. He said we couldn't keep paying for your place forever if you wouldn't at least try. My stomach twisted. Paying for my place. I'd been covering my own rent since 19. Shed never sent me a cent. The next paragraph made my blood run cold. You don't know this, but Greg was the reason your father and I separated. I met him before the divorce was final. He told me things about your dad, about what had done, and I believed him. Maybe I shouldn't have. It was the first time Shed ever acknowledged cheating. But instead of admitting it, she framed it as believing the wrong man. Classic. Greg can be intense, but has been good to me, has given me stability. I know you think I chose him over you, but sometimes, Alex, people can't save to things at once. That line hit me harder than I expected. People can't save to things at once. Was that what I'd been to her all along? A sinking ship she cut loose to stay afloat. I thought that was the end of it. But there was more. A single folded note inside the envelope, smaller, almost hidden. On it was a different handwriting. Sharper, masculine. Greg's. You need to stop turning her against me, Alex. You don't know what she's been through. She doesn't need your guilt games. If you want to talk to me. Talk to him? After everything? That's when I realized something. This wasn't just a letter. It was surveillance. He was still controlling her, even out, even through her words. I didn't respond. But 2 weeks later, she called. Her voice trembled. I didn't think you'd read it, she whispered. Greg said maybe it would help you see things differently. You mean, help him control the narrative? I shot back. Silence. You don't understand what he's like when he's angry, she finally said. He reads my messages. He checks my phone. I can't just leave. I froze. Because for the first time in years, her tone sounded scared. Not manipulative. Not guilt-tripping. Scared. Mom, is he hurting you? It's not that simple, she said quietly. Has never. She stopped herself. He just gets angry when he feels ignored. He says I make him that way. My chest tightened. That sentence. He says I make him that way. I'd heard it before. From her. When I was 15. When she was the one yelling. The pattern had reversed. Now she was the one being controlled. A month went by with no contact. Then I got another call. This time from an unknown number. It was Katie. Greg's daughter, the girl I'd once shared a room with at the lake house. Alex, she said, her voice shaky. I didn't know who else to call. Something happened. My heart stopped. What do you mean? It's my dad, she whispered. He's in jail. There was an incident. With your mom. When I got to the hospital, Mom was sitting in a wheelchair, bruises along her arm, a cut on her lip. The doctor said she'd been shoved down the stairs during an argument. Greg was arrested for assault. She looked up when she saw me. Eyes swollen, but familiar in a way I hadn't seen in years. Not the polished woman who chose comfort over love. Just my mother. You came, she whispered. Of course I did. She started crying. Deep, painful sobs that echoed against the sterile walls. And for a second, despite everything, I held her hand. But forgiveness doesn't come easy. Not after a lifetime of being the one left behind. In the weeks that followed, she stayed with me. At first, it was awkward, like living with a stranger. Then, little by little, she started talking. About Greg. About how the vacation was really a test. His idea to prove Shed moved on from me, about how every boundary Shed crossed was one had drawn, and about how Shed lost herself long before she ever lost me. One night, she said something that stayed with me. I used to think betrayal was something you do once, but sometimes it's something you live in, every day, until you forget what freedom feels like. She wasn't excusing herself. She was confessing. And for the first time, I saw her not as my mother, but as a broken woman trapped in the same cycle Shed once trapped me in. It's been 2 years now. She lives alone in a small apartment. Greg's in prison. Katie doesn't speak to either of them. Sometimes, Mom calls. Not to apologize, not to explain. just to ask if I've eaten, if I'm okay. And maybe that's her way of trying. Do I love her? Yes. Do I forgive her? Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I've learned that sometimes healing doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means peace. Because betrayal doesn't always come from hatred. Sometimes it's born from fear, from weakness, from love warped into survival. And maybe that's what makes it hurt the most, when the person who was supposed to protect you ends up needing saving themselves. Part E, the vacation house revisited. I never thought I'd see that lake again. Not after everything that happened, the shouting, the slammed doors, the cold silence that followed me out into the night when I left. But time has a way of circling back, dragging you to the places you thought you'd buried forever. It's been 4 years since Greg's arrest. 3 since my mother started piecing her life back together. And 2 since she asked me one simple question that's haunted me since. Do you think I ever loved him? I didn't know how to answer, so I didn't. Then, last month, the realtor called. The lake house had finally been put up for sale. Greg's name was still on the deed, but since had never paid the property taxes. The state was auctioning it off. The realtor asked if I wanted to come by and sign a few forms. Apparently, Mom's name was still listed as co-owner. I should have said no, but curiosity, or maybe obsession, won again. So here I was, standing in front of the same house where everything had fallen apart. Same cracked porch, same peeling blue paint. Only now the air was heavy with a different kind of silence, the silence of things left behind. The door creaked open easily. No one had lived here since the arrest. The furniture was covered in white sheets, but the ghosts underneath were still there. I could almost hear them. The laughter that wasn't for me, the whispers, the fights muffled behind walls too thin to hide the truth. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe closure, maybe proof that it all really happened. I started walking from room to room, touching walls, tracing the outlines of a life that had never made space for me. And then I stopped in the hallway. There it was. That same small bedroom where I'd been forced to share with Katie. The one they said I was making a big deal about. I stepped inside, and for a moment, it was like time folded. I could see my younger self standing by the bed, gripping the sheets, pretending I didn't hear the muffled laughter from the master bedroom. The sound of my mother choosing someone else. I should have left, but something caught my eye. A small, uneven line in the wooden wall paneling, too straight to be random, almost like a hidden compartment. I pushed against it. It gave way with a dull creak, revealing a narrow cavity behind the wall. Inside was a metal tin, dusty, rusted shut. I pried it open with a screwdriver I found on the shelf. Inside were papers, torn, faded, but still legible, and on top, a notebook. Greg's handwriting, the same sharp, ugly cursive that had filled the note had once sent me through my mother. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first line stopped me cold. Control isn't cruelty if it keeps them safe. I flipped through page after page. What started as a journal quickly turned into something else. Notes, plans, rationalizations. It wasn't a diary. It was a manual. She needs structure. She panics when left to her own devices. I remind her that I'm the only one who won't abandon her. She listens better after that. The boy, Alex, threatens the balance. He reminds her of the past. If has gone, shall have no reason to keep running. Lake house test, if he resists or argues, use her guilt. Shall fold. I felt my throat close. It wasn't just manipulation. It was orchestrated, deliberate psychological warfare. Greg hadn't just controlled her, had scripted every word she said to me that week. Every silence, every guilt trip, every "you're overreacting." At the bottom of the box, beneath the papers, was something else. A photograph. It was me, 16 years old, sitting at the kitchen table, taken through the window. I had no idea it had ever been taken. On the back, in Greg's handwriting, "Weak link, break early." My vision blurred. For a second, I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just control. This was surveillance, predation. Had been planning my alienation from the very beginning. I left the room shaking. The walls suddenly felt to close, like they were leaning in. That's when I heard something behind me. A thud. I turned sharply. It was the realtor standing in the doorway. "Sorry, didn't mean to scare you," he said. "Just checking the pipes. You okay?" I nodded quickly, hiding the notebook behind my back. "Yeah, I said. Just memories. He smiled faintly. This place has bad energy. You can feel it the second you walk in. He wasn't wrong. That night, I sat in my car parked by the lake, flipping through the notebook again. Every page was another layer of manipulation. Notes on conversations, predictions of reactions, even calculations of how long it would take Mon to submit emotionally. And then I reached the last page. It was dated to weeks before the vacation. She says she wants to invite him. I told her it's time. He needs to see what Hes missing. He needs to understand Hes not the center anymore. Once he leaves, he won't come back. He'll prove her guilt right and shall stay. They always stay. That's when it hit me. He wanted me to leave. He engineered it. Every insult, every exclusion. It wasn't about me being difficult. It was about isolating her, cutting me out completely so he could have her to himself. The betrayal wasn't just my mother choosing him over me. It was her being turned into a weapon, one she didn't even know she was holding. I called her that night. "Mom," I said softly, "I found something at the lake house." There was a long pause. "What did you find?" "His notebook, his plans, everything." Her voice cracked. "Burn it," she whispered. "Please, Alex. Don't read it. Don't let it stay alive. You deserve to see it," I said. "No," she replied. "I already lived it once. I didn't burn it. Not yet. I kept it in a box under my bed, not as a trophy. Not as vengeance, but as a reminder of how deep betrayal can go, of how love, when twisted by fear, can become control. And sometimes, when I can't sleep, I open it and reread that first line. Control isn't cruelty if it keeps them safe, because that's what people like Greg believe. That breaking someone is just a way to protect them from breaking themselves. And maybe that's what makes betrayal the cruelest form of love, when it comes disguised as protection. The lake house was demolished last month. They're building vacation cabins there now, bright and sterile, with smiling faces in the ads. But sometimes I drive by the water anyway. The reflection still looks the same. Calm, quiet, beautiful. You'd never know how much pain once lived beneath it. And as the wind ripples across the surface, I always think the same thing. Some houses aren't haunted by ghosts. They're haunted by the people who survived them.